Where is our country right now? You have a unique perspective. Where is the United States of America right now?
Well, we're at a very, very important crossroads. We've got challenges, much as the British Empire did, the Roman Empire did, in that we have been the world superpower for quite a while, and now there are emerging competitors, China and of course India, and of course that places us in the position of having to really develop a will to get out of complacency in order to maintain our place in the global community. I'm very concerned about some of the basics and the fundamentals that we have had historically. We've had a country that was strong in values, that was had a very, very strong patriotic fervor and a will to compete and to be the best.
Where did our country start to lose focus, or has it lost focus?
I'm not sure what the precise historical moment was, but I think that right around the time of the development of the internet, with the beginning of the Iraq War, we had been the eminent superpower, but once the internet spread worldwide, it allowed developing countries to move much faster and to accelerate their pace of development. And of course, India and China had developed institutes of technology, and of course they have 10 times the population that we have. And of course, they're developing 10 times as many scientists, engineers, mathematicians, and technologists. And of course, that places us at a disadvantage. But not only that, they're developing 10 times as many MBAs and entrepreneurs as we are. And of course, that has placed us in the global marketplace as not necessarily the world's most developing and growing economy.
Does that scare you?
It does. It does. It gives me cause for concern. We have to be focused on not only the here and now and today, but we've got to think about the next generation. We've got to think about the future of our country, as well as the well-being of people who are inhabitants now. And of course, that requires us to confront the challenges that we face realistically, not in a Republican or a Democrat way, but in an American way. Because the problems and the challenges are not really Republican problems or Democratic problems, they're American problems, and we need American solutions, and it requires the best minds from whatever political perspective one has to focus on those problems and to exchange ideas and communicate. And there came a time in our body politic, probably around the time of the Gingrich Revolution, that the ability and the propensity for members of Congress to have congenial relationships sort of fell by the wayside. It became a very hostile, a very partisan, a very finger-pointing environment. And that has persisted, and I think it has distracted us from our purpose. When our founding fathers created our government with the separation of powers and the checks and balances, that was a basic assumption that the people who were involved in our government would be working for the common good.
Let's talk about social change for a second. You grew up in the civil rights era. You attended Morehouse. What year were you in?
64 to 68.
Obviously, Dr. King came out of Morehouse. Morehouse was a center for forward thinking in our country at that period, right?
Yes. In fact, my freshman year, Dr. King received the Nobel Prize, and I got to meet him because Dr. Mays, who was president and had been a mentor to Dr. King, invited him following his receipt of the Nobel Prize to receive an honorary degree and to have a convocation where he spoke. And of course, I was so impressed with Dr. King. I had an opportunity to meet him, and of course, I began to follow him. That was a very, very interesting and tumultuous time. There were lots of conflicting models of leadership at that time. There was Dr. King, there was Stokely Carmichael, and H. Rap Brown, and Malcolm X. And so all of these ideas for young college students were the topic of our late dorm night conversations. And of course, Dr. King, being a very prominent Morehouse grad, really arrested our attention.
Where were you when you heard he had been assassinated?
I had just left dinner in the dining hall in Mays Hall and walked into the student lounge and watched the 6 o'clock news. The news finished the cycle, and they'd gone into the 7 o'clock program, and then breaking news came across the screen that Dr. King had been shot. And of course, you could hear the rumblings and the noise across the neighborhood all around the campus, and it wasn't long before fires began to flare up all around the campus, and so we had to try to mobilize to make sure that nobody set fire to the buildings on campus. And of course, I was SJ president. I was trying to keep things under control, and ultimately we managed to escape any bad things on the campus, but all around the campus, the neighborhood grocery stores, they were firebombed, and the windows were broken out of various businesses that were around in the city. And of course, by the time of the funeral, we were just all shaken. And of course, for the funeral day, I went to the funeral at Ebenezer Church, and I marched with the mule train over to the campus at Morehouse, where they had the public funeral. The other one was public, but it was smaller, but they had it on the campus. And of course, I was a member of the Morehouse Glee Club, so as I walked back, when we got within a few blocks, I ran to the dorm, switched into my Glee Club blazer, and then got my position near the stage with the Glee Club for the funeral. It was quite an experience. The first time I got to see luminaries such as Ted Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Harry Belafonte, Mahalia Jackson, all of them were focused right there, and they were there in live and living color. These luminaries, celebrities that I had seen, heard about, read about, and there they were.
How is our country different in 2015 than it was in 1968?
We've come a long way.
Is there still hate?
Yes, there is hate, and there perhaps will always be hate. But we have come a long way from where we were in 1968, where we were in 1964, and 65 before the Voting Rights Act.
Came to Columbus in 72, right?
Yes.
How's Columbus changed in the 40 plus years?
Oh, it has changed tremendously.
Is Columbus more progressive racially than some of the other communities like a Macon or a Montgomery or an Augusta or a Savannah?
I would not.
Mobile?
I wouldn't say that it is. I would say that all of those communities have made progress. I have found, being associated with all of those communities, that Columbus, I think, is probably as progressive as any. Although we still have a ways to go here.
What's the biggest challenge Columbus faces racially?
I think it's based in economics, where you have the class differences. It results in educational differences, which results in employment differences and income differences, which results in involvements with the criminal justice system, which tends to be people who on the low income scale tend to be more involved in the criminal justice system in terms of numbers than people who are better educated. And of course that tends to the end result tends to be to show up in race.
Is education the key?
Education, as some say, is the escalator to upward mobility. It's key. As we were growing up as children, pre-civil rights movement and during the civil rights movement, my parents always told me that I needed to study hard and to get as much education as I could, that no one could ever take that, so that when the doors finally opened, that I would be prepared to walk in. And of course that was constantly drilled in us in that segregated society, that one day you'll have an opportunity. And of course many saw that opportunity as finishing high school and going to the north. So many of my classmates left high school and they went to New York, or they went to Chicago, or they went to Maryland, or they went someplace outside of the segregated South. By the time I had gotten to be college age, I had determined that I didn't want to be a part of what I considered the brain drain. People who got an education and then took that education and went north and did not come back to do something to try to improve the conditions at home.